definition of surrender is to cease resistance to an enemy or opponent and submit to their authority. So when you're not in a state of submission or surrenderance, the person who you refuse to surrender to is viewed as your enemy, your opponent. So even when we're not in a state of surrender with God, now we are God's opposition. So we are on day 2 of our 31-day challenge. I'm so glad that y'all came back. I actually wanted to talk about something else. This was my day 3 thing, but I just read this verse and I was like, I'm compelled to talk about day 3 for day 2. Okay, so or my second, I don't know, what are we calling it? The second reason for gratefulness, I guess. I don't know. Y'all tell me how I should word that. The season of uncertainty, the season of, molding, I guess you want to call it. It has taught me to surrender. I'm a strong-willed person. Like, if I don't want to do something, you're not going to get me to do it. Unless I'm trying to please you. Like, I was a real big people pleaser at one point in my life. But now that's kind of going away a little bit. But when my mind is set on something, my mind is set on something, and I'm not going to move from it. And so my mind was so set on losing. My mind was set on losing. And I could not overcome the idea of being, I don't know, I guess this kind of goes hand in hand. I'm sorry. It's like worth and surrenderance are my next 2. So this kind of goes hand in hand with value and worth according to God. But as it comes to surrendering, I had to surrender the thoughts of being a loser. Even though I guess if you look at my resume, I'm not a loser, right? But I had a vision for my life. I had a vision in the way that things should go. And then I had a child, I wasn't married, and then moved back to where I live now. And everything was just like, I'm a loser. But when I look at the big picture, and actually when I look in the past, I realized that God had already gave me this vision of how my life was going to go, minus the child. But he already gave me the vision of how my life was going to go, that I was going to end up back where I am, and that the things I was going to accomplish while I was in this space. So again, it's so important to have a reflective mind in the process of growing with God, to be able to perceive, right? To be aware that God is doing something. You may not know what he's doing, but he's doing something. And so in the midst of this learning season, God has taught me how to surrender, not just surrender to him, but also surrender to other people. Even when it comes to like my parents, like, now that I'm a child, it's like, but I'm always going to be your mother. But it kind of hits different when, you are, little bro, right? When you are the child and you think you're an adult and you're an adult, but at the same time, the respect and the reverence that you should have for your parents. So he is teaching me how in relationships, compromise. He's teaching me compromise. He's teaching me submission. He's teaching me, how to submit. And when you submit, well, let's see, the definition of surrender. The definition of surrender is to cease resistance to an enemy or opponent and submit to their authority. So when you're not in a state of submission or surrenderance, the person who you refuse to surrender to is viewed as your enemy, your opponent. So even when we're not in a state of surrender with God, now we are God's opposition. If we are not, living in community with God, then we are living against him, right? So when we are not living righteously with God being first, and then people, and then nature, then we are out of line and we are living outside of God's will. And therefore we are most likely living in sin if God is not first. And therefore we are in opposition of God. Okay, so surrenderance is to stop being in opposition, stop being in battle, and willingly going forward with whomever it is you were opposing. And when we are able to surrender, then we are able to start trusting. We are able to start being able to be led. And we are able to now, instead of fighting and hearing our way, we are able to now understand the other person or understand God. I just kind of want to read this verse. It's Proverbs 3, and it's trusting in the Lord. And it says, "My child, never forget the things I have taught you. Store my commands in your heart. If you do this, you will live many years, and your life will be satisfying. Never let loyalty and kindness leave you. Tie them around your neck as a reminder. Write them deep within your heart. Then you will find favor with both God and people, and you will earn a good reputation. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take. Don't be impressed with your own wisdom. Instead, fear the Lord and turn away from evil. Then you will have healing for your body and strength for your bones. Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the best part of everything you produce. Then He will fill your barns with grain, and your vats will overflow with good wine. My child, don't reject the Lord's discipline, and don't be upset when He corrects you. For the Lord corrects those He loves, just as a father corrects a child whom He delights. Joyful is the person who finds wisdom, the one who gains understanding. For wisdom is more profitable than silver, and her wages are better than gold." So this verse, this is what? Proverbs 3, and what I read goes all the way down to 14, 1 through 14. And literally this verse, it talks about trust, right? When you surrender, that means, you're ready to stop battling. You're ready to stop distrusting, okay? And you're ready to go with the flow. So when you surrender, you're trusting in God. When you surrender, then God is leading the way. Then He is first. That means He said, acknowledge me in all that you do. Give me the first fruits. Turn away from evil. All those things, when you surrender, those are the things you do when you're surrendering to God. And just like we read the verse from Isaiah yesterday, it's like when you surrender, and He reaffirms it, when you surrender, good will happen. Things will start going good for you. Where you thought you were lost, He will make a path in the wilderness. Where you thought you were depleted and thirsty, He'll make rivers in the desert. And so when you surrender to God, and as I'm seeing, as I continue to surrender to Him, because it's an everyday fight to surrender. It's an everyday fight to surrender. It's an everyday fight to renew your mind. And that's why renewing your mind is so key to walking this life. You have to constantly be aware, right? Perceive what you are thinking, right? Perceive how you are acting, perceive what is going on, have awareness. And then when you are off track, when you are out of alignment with God, when you start opposing God instead of surrendering to God, then you have to renew your mind. And you have to continue to renew your mind over and over and over and over again. Even if, 1 minute you're sitting here crying because God is telling you no and you really, really want it. But then you have to surrender and you have to say, you know what, God, I trust you at this point. And it can't just be lip service. Like your heart, once you really mean it, your heart will change. And, yeah, you got to pray about it. Yeah, you got to be quiet. Yeah, you have to allow God to talk to you. So you need to be quiet. Your space needs to be quiet. You need to be away from everybody, and you need to allow the Holy Spirit to minister to you and to relieve that stress so you can renew your mind and get back into surrenderance. Because when you're surrendered to him, then he's going to do everything that he promised you he's going to do. And that's never leave you, never forsake you. And he's going to make you great no matter what you do, no matter where you are and everything, he's going to make you great. Even if you're struggling, he's going to make you great, because it's not about you. It's not about your wisdom. It's not about your beauty. It's not about your knowledge. It's not about your little bit of understanding, but the surrenderance to his mightiness, the surrenderance to his deity, to knowing that he is God. He is the one who created you. He is the beginning and the last. He is the one who has put everything into you and is the only one who can fill you up with more. When you are able to acknowledge that and surrender to that, he loves that. And he just gives you more. It's like when you're in love with somebody and, they buy you a gift, and then you love the gift so much, you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to give you an even bigger gift because I just love you. And that's what God does. Surrenderance and righteousness and reverence is a big gift to God. He loves that from us. He loves to know that we love him. And the only way a free-willed person can show God that they love him is if they give authority to him. If they choose to put God first, if they choose to be in right relationship with God over everything else. And so, yeah, hopefully I wasn't rambling. I feel like I'm rambling on these videos, so I hope I'm not rambling. I hope I'm making sense, because it makes sense when I'm thinking about it, but then it's like translating it on this video and then having this video look at you in the face. It's pretty ridiculous. But yes, so my day 2 thought, or my day 2 thought of gratefulness is surrendering, learning how to surrender, and learning how to surrender. And that's what we have to be aware of too. We have to learn that the things that he is growing us in, we have to be cognizant of how we're doing it, because it's going to be our job to teach somebody else. It's going to be our job to display it to somebody else. And the only way that you can get better at doing what you're doing is realizing what you're doing to get better. I don't know. Again, it sounds like a ramble. But yeah, so y'all let me know, what is your day 2 thought of gratefulness? Please put it in the comments. Share this video if you care. Like, subscribe to the channel, click the bell notification, and then I'm probably about to go ahead and make day 3. So I'll see y'all back in the next video. Bye.